How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to episode number 37 of the Flight Time Podcast. Today, we've got 3 topics. We'll talk about the new Ring camera drone. We'll talk about the new DJI Smart Controller. And I think the third topic is still kind of in the air for now, but we'll see you guys in a second.
What is good, everybody? Ken here. You are listening to Flight Time Podcast. Got Billy Kyle. It's been a hot minute since we've done an episode.
It's been a while, huh?
It feels like 2 months or something like that.
Well, yeah, I'm looking here at the channel and it says that it's been a full 2 months since we've uploaded a podcast.
Yeah.
It's always something that I feel like I put on the back burner, and I think maybe same goes for you, but it's something I want to get more into because there's so much to discuss in the drone industry about technology in general, and when you try to put a video up online that's like sub 10 minutes for people's attention span, sometimes you just can't convey everything you want to talk about. So that's why I think that this podcast is so good, especially with stuff going on in the drone industry. And the 3 topics that we have today, I think, are going to be pretty cool to talk about, pretty fun, right? The first one being that Ring camera drone. So did you see the 30-second clip they put up on their YouTube channel?
I did. I was watching that, man.
It's
pretty nuts.
It's really interesting. I think it's great technology. So if you guys don't know what we're talking about, it's basically a small little drone that sits inside of a square hub, and then the drone can take off and fly throughout your house. And just like any security camera, you can watch a live feed, but the difference here is that this drone flies around. So because we're on a podcast format here, we can't show you guys a picture of it, but if you want to go ahead and just type in Ring security drone, you'll see that it's kind of like those stick drones or like the egg drones, where it's more of like a, I guess, vertical shape rather than horizontal shape. It's not as flat, but it has this stick.
Think of it as a
down.
mini box fan. It looks like a mini box fan that's laying, that's square. It's got ducts.
Yes.
And
yeah. And
it's definitely meant for indoor flight only.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of those hover drones, right? Where the entire, I guess, propeller housing is going to be closed in by these vents and by these, I don't know what exactly you'd call them. I'm looking at this picture now, but it's deceiving because it almost looks like it'd be a very small drone, but this thing is actually pretty large. They don't have any like specs or dimensions as of right now because this won't be available until 2021, and of course we're towards the end of 2020 now, but it's going to be going for $249, and the drone autonomously flies throughout your house. Now, I've got a couple of questions here, right? They showed in the video somebody breaking into the house, and then the drone flies to that window or to that door. So I wonder if that's how it works. It only will fly to areas where it needs to be. So for example, if a window gets broken, if a door gets broken into, or I wonder if you can almost map out the house with an initial flight using this drone and then tell it maybe every 10 minutes or 20 minutes to fly up, run that route to showcase everything in your house, and then land, and then you can obviously watch that footage back. So I think it's a really good idea. I'm pretty interested in it.
Yeah, it's definitely a concept. I think we've seen companies sort of toy around with this idea before, but I don't think anybody's actually really executed it in this fashion where it sort of can know exactly where it's got to go back to. I sort of think of it like a Roomba vacuum cleaner.
Dude,
knows
totally
how to get back to its stock. This is like sort of the opposite. And obviously with AI today, I mean, you can pull this off and, you can have sort of situational awareness in the house. I'm sure there's other sensors or things at play, but honestly, I'm going to buy one when it comes out.
Totally. Now I've got
one.
Nest. I've got Nest here at my home, so it's going to be kind of a weird integration, but I can fully anticipate Nest coming out with something like this that you can use in the future. And I think it's smart that they're starting inside because there's less conditions that you got to worry about with this drone because there's not going to be any wind. There's not going to be any change in temperature. It's going to be relatively the same. I think the only obstacle that I'm going to be interested in seeing is steps. How's it going to be able to change its elevation moving from one floor to the other? Are they even going to let you do that? And also another obstacle I'm wondering is cats, because I can just see a drone flying through the house and a cat jumping out of nowhere and tackling this thing down.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I know my cat, or even dogs, even they're gonna have it to where it's like, okay, it's gonna stay at a certain elevation, I would imagine.
Yeah,
for this thing to be safe.
So, and I also wonder, like, what kind of autonomous technology is in this, because right now the gold standard is Skydio with the Skydio 2, but you've got to imagine that you need a much higher fidelity of obstacle avoidance in a drone like that that's flying outside and that's flying so fast, whereas this drone will just fly, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 miles an hour throughout your home. So there's nothing crazy that needs to be involved in that. And I think the biggest thing that they'll be up against is just trying to get that stable footage to the point where it's usable. They're not going to put a gimbal on this thing. It's probably going to be all electronic image stabilization, but I just hope that it's not something that'll be crazy shaky. I'm reading the Drone XL article here. Shout out to Hi. It says that in early 2019, Sunflower Labs introduced a $10,000 drone that could monitor fully autonomously outside of the home. So that's a lot more expensive than the $250 Ring camera, but you've got to also imagine that Ring has, all this capital built up behind them, so they're able to go and make something that can be massively bought by the public. But yeah, I find this so interesting. Drone XL was actually the first people I saw even tweet about it today. I see here the kind of the specs that they came out with. It says indoor only, 1080p video, only records in flight, enclosed propellers, and integrates with Ring alarm. So this is going to be something that's going to be awesome. And I think that as a first generation product, there'll be its bumps and kind of the things it's got to get over. But see this in like 5 years from now, we'll be having like 4 of these monitoring the outside and inside of our home.
Yeah, but that's pretty cool though that, they would even, get that sort of lack of words here.
Yeah, no,
be that
I think
daring to be that daring to do that, because it's sort of ballsy to like even, show it. But there is some positives about doing something like this. One, people have a fear of drones, and now you can sort of make it more of a friendly thing, like, hey, it's here to protect you.
Totally.
The other thing, though, you said something, you talked about it's sort of big. I am sort of curious as to the weight, because if it flies, even if it's in your house, technically, from an FAA standpoint,
oh God, don't
if
even
it's
start.
over an X, I'm just saying, I'm just being devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
My guess is that it's probably going to be pretty light. I mean, obviously nobody wants one of those things crashing down on a glass dining room table or something. That would be terrible. But I think it's cool. I think it's definitely, I can't wait to get my hands on one. I never thought I'd say that about a Ring camera, but
it's a really interesting take on the technology of drones. I mean, when you think about drones, there's so many different use case scenarios, but for a company like Ring that's so well established to come out with something that, just like you said, makes drones more friendly is pretty interesting. So it's going to be cool to see how that integrates. And again, I can only imagine that Nest will clap back with their version of an interior camera drone. But what I think is going to be even more interesting is seeing how they eventually integrate it for outdoor, and if they're going to make something like that. Because I have a feeling that an outdoor one might be a little bit more valuable. Something that Steve said when I was talking to him is that if you've got a home that you want to be monitored, like a secondary home, like a shore house or something, you could buy one of these for $250 to monitor the entire inside of your house, make sure that all the windows are shut, make sure all the windows are, not broken into or anything like that. You can get one of these for $250 rather than outfitting your house with, $2,000-$3,000 worth of cameras. So it's one camera really to rule them all if you use it properly. But again, this is all stuff we'll have to see when this eventually drops. So now what I want to do is kind of move over to the next topic here about the Smart Controller, which, dude, that update was rough for the Mavic Air 2.
So
I've never experienced a harder
not even
firmware update from DJI for any of their products.
So are you talking about specifically on the Smart Controller? Because we bricked 3 controllers.
No way.
Yesterday
With this update?
Yeah. No, not even joking with you. So when people were buying the Smart Controller, one of the things that they were asking to have done before we shipped them out was, can we update the Smart Controllers for them so they didn't have to? And we're like, yeah, sure, no problem. Normally it's not a problem, but this update, something's not right, because man, we tried Windows, we tried Mac, we tried OTA, brick 3 of them. We did finally get them back. But yeah, what an ordeal. 4 hours later, updating 3 controllers. Something's not correct. But yeah, you're right. This has been a pain in the ass of an update.
Yeah, so I watched your video and you said that you did a full entire factory reset. And dude, I had to do the same thing before updating. I had to factory reset my controller because I couldn't figure out a way to get rid of the storage on the controller. I think I had like 9 gigs taken up from just cached video and cached photos, and I was trying to go through and delete all of that, but I couldn't figure out how to do it, even going through all the settings and the storage. And when I deleted them from my album, they still seemed to take space up. And then for some reason, it said that I had like negative 18 gigs in my system files. It was a mess. So I had to totally factory reset my controller and then download the update. So, I feel like this is something that DJI does. Like, their software isn't extremely polished on their drones, and for their peripherals, they kind of lack behind making them up to date with the newer drones, like the goggles, for example, right? They get updates that are few and far between, and the same thing we're seeing here with the Smart Controller. It's just not really well maintained like their drones, and their drones sometimes aren't even well maintained. So I hope that they fix their stuff here, because it really just makes it difficult. Even talking with people, they're tempted to not upgrade just because it's such a hassle, which is a shame, because if you're somebody who has the Mavic 2 Pro as your go-to drone and the Mavic Air 2 as your backup, having that one controller, it's so clutch. It's so nice.
Yeah, it really is. And then the other problem is the fact that now that it kills me trying to bind, like, so I bound it and then I switch back to my Mavic 2 Pro and then it disconnects the Air again. So every time you freaking have to connect the Mavic Air 2, you're freaking having to do that rebind procedure, which here's the thing, maybe not everybody's going to have that problem, but I would venture to say that the vast majority of people who bought the Smart Controller probably have a Mavic 2 Pro, Mavic 2 Zoom, or something to that effect anyhow, right? Yep. You're not buying that. You didn't buy the Smart Controller strictly for the Mavic Air 2. And hey, if you did, great, but I would say the vast majority didn't. So having to swap back and forth and rebind like that is a pain in the neck. Shouldn't do that. They need to fix that. Needs to be like priority number 1. Fix that. It's great that we have the update, but now we get to complain now that the update's here.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: is that DJI held off on putting this update out, and I thought that they were doing that. I thought they were doing that so that they could make things right here. Maybe there was an issue, but it seems like all these issues haven't been, ironed out. And, as somebody who isn't a software engineer, as somebody who doesn't deal with coding every single day, I don't know how hard it is to like port an app over to a Smart Controller, but like really, how hard is it to just bring the Fly app to the Smart Controller and make it work with the Mavic Air 2? I feel like it'd be something that could be done very quickly, So I wonder why it took them so long to... I wonder why it took them so long to make it work in the first place, but then I also wonder why in this time it's taken them, they haven't made it right, because the fact that you can't even update it from the controller itself, like you said, over the air, it's a nightmare. So I think that's something that's going to be interesting is, to see how the Smart Controller integrates with the Mavic Air 2 in terms of how it's being sold. So like, are they going to sell a Mavic Air 2 with the Smart Controller now? Do you think that they are going to sell maybe a Mavic Air 2 excluding the remote controller so that somebody can just buy the Mavic Air 2 and use it with the Smart Controller they already have? It's going to be interesting to see, but I feel like they'll make some sort of move here in the coming weeks.
You know what's interesting about the Smart Controller is I really feel like that's DJI's best product. Like,
totally.
That's not a drone. I'll say it like that because it spoils you in terms of usability for your drone, and then it's just so simplistic in what it does, and I don't take advantage of half the features that it offers. But there's a lot of multiple use cases for that Smart Controller. Like for FPV, you can't see the digital feed or output that out to a TV or live stream without the Smart Controller. Mm-hmm. So for the enterprise side of life, you need the Smart Controller for certain operations, like even the M300s, I believe. They require that as well, the enterprise version, but still same thing. So definitely awesome freaking controller. I love that thing.
It's so
even
good.
Though it's expensive.
It is expensive, and that's why a lot of people, even on the videos that we posted about the update here, people are wondering, like, how is this worth it? Why is it worth it to me to go and buy a $749 controller that is basically the same price as the Mavic Air 2? And there's the 4 things I always say. Yeah. There's build quality, there's the ports on the back, there's the really bright screen, and there's the overall efficiency of having an all-in-one controller. You don't have to mess around with your phone. And I think that when you say those things, it's hard for people to understand the value there in such an expensive controller.
You don't understand it until you use it.
Nope,
if
exactly.
That makes sense. It's like one of those things you just have to use it to really you'll appreciate it more after you use it, and then once you use it, you're like, oh shit, this was awesome.
Yeah, and look, I was in the same boat. I remember as soon as it came out, I didn't buy it. I mean, I remember when you came up and the Smart Controller just came out, I was still flying with my stock Mavic 2 controller, and two years later after it came out, I finally said, all right, let me buy it, let me see what it's about, and it totally changed my workflow because it makes flying easier, and also on the flip side, it just makes moving between two different drones a lot easier. I would even go to say, you've flown with it, right? You've flown this the Mavic Air 2 with the Smart Controller?
Yeah, I flew today. I like the fact that now, we have like customizable buttons. I can flip the camera down, or like, if I'm already in the down position, I can flip it back up immediately so I can line up for my next shot. That was one thing I did miss. I did miss having those buttons behind, on the backside of the controller to be able to quickly toggle the camera.
Yeah,
the scroll wheel for the zoom is good now. Like, that's awesome to have. There's a lot of benefit.
The function button on the top left of the controller on the stock Mavic Air 2 remote always felt so far out of place. Like, I felt like I was going out of my way to hit that function button. So, having those custom buttons available on the back, so nice now. And I've said in the past that I really like the Mavic Air 2 remote. I made a full video on just, why I think it's a better upgrade over the older, remote that was used with the original Mavic Air. I think that the drone actually now flies better with the Smart Controller. Like, I just feel like the sticks are more responsive. I feel like the whole experience from getting it set up to actually flying it is just across the board better. So, if you're somebody that has the Mavic Air 2, look, if you can foot the bill, I'd recommend getting the Smart Controller. It's going to make the experience a lot better. But if you're somebody that's, on the fence of, well, should I buy the Mavic Air 2 and should I get the Smart Controller with that drone, I would say hold out maybe just for a couple of weeks, because I could see DJI offering some sort of package deal that includes Mavic Air 2 and Smart Controller.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a price reduction on that eventually, because, it's been holding steady at the same price that it was at launch. So, inevitably, they're going to have to adjust that because of the age of that particular, unit. So,
yep.
I don't know. I just think it's freaking. This update was everything we should have had right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm. I just hope that DJI will consistently update the Fly app within the Smart Controller, because we're getting some pretty massive updates to the Fly app through iOS, which is great, like adding little things that should have been there from the beginning. But just for example, in the most recent Fly app update, we got a little piece of text or a little field of text at the bottom of the screen that shows us how much more video we can record with the current space left on our SD card, which is great to reference because you can understand if you're running low on space, and especially if you have a smaller card, or even if you're using the internal storage that is only 8 gigabytes, how much you have left to record, and you can tell if you can take a longer clip or a shorter clip. It just makes things a lot easier. But on the Smart Controller, it doesn't have that text at the bottom. So I feel like iOS gets a really good amount of updates, and with the Fly app being such a new app that has to mature, I just hope that they can consistently update the Smart Controller version of the Fly app too, because that would kind of be a bummer if we're stuck with this version for months and months on end while iOS is getting all these updates.
I think they do prioritize the Smart Controller updates, and there's no reason that they shouldn't, because if you think about it, it is definitely easier for them to do these updates, because it's pretty damn easy.
Totally.
It's Android, so there shouldn't be an issue with that, but there always seems to be. But I do feel like the Smart Controller updates do come a little bit more frequently because they don't have to go through app approvals. They're not dealing with the Google Play Store, so there's different things at play, even though it is Android. So that's sort of a nicety.
Yeah, I think this update overall is a win, but there's still some issues that people are experiencing on the back end. So I just hope that they can come out with, maybe some sort of new firmware over the next couple of days to patch this up. But I'm not holding my breath because it took them so long to get this update out to even make it compatible with the Mavic Air 2. But the Smart Controller has really turned into this universal DJI remote controller. I talked about the Mavic Mini in my video, about how there's no support right now for the Mavic Mini, but I think it'd be cool if they did that. If you could connect the Mavic Mini to the Smart Controller, that'd be such a weird experience, flying this little drone with such an expensive controller.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking it out this week when I go to Colorado. I want to see if, you know, the range is any better. I tried flying it yesterday, but I don't know if it was just yesterday. I was getting crazy breakup on no matter what I flew. It wasn't good. I'm on my 4th Mavic 2 Pro now because of that.
Yo, so I meant to ask you, I kind of saw the ring video from your camera when you were running out of your house. What happened to your drone?
So what happened was this agent busted my balls about doing some like reshoot. They're like, "Oh, my client's angry. You didn't get this photo, that photo." I'm like, "All right, whatever. I'm just going to go grab it." So I figure, well, I got a little bit of time before I got to get to work. So I'm like, I'll run over to this place, go shoot it. So I'm running out to my car, and apparently I didn't have the bag like zipped all the way. It was zipped, but it wasn't zipped all the way. There was just enough space where the Smart Controller and the drone could slip out. So when I swung the bag over to throw it into the back seat, the drone hit the ground face down, and what looks like there's not a lot of damage on it, but that little bit of damage like basically made the vision sensors in the front inoperable. And as soon as I powered it on, it was getting obstacle avoidance error, needs calibration, and then it would get the IMU error, and there was no fixing that. So I was like, all right, fuck it. But then what I didn't realize was the Smart Controller slid down the driveway. And it cracked the screen.
Really?
So yeah. Dude, so I needed a new Smart Controller, new Mavic 2 Pro. Expensive day. When
I bought the Smart Controller, I instantly put a screen protector on there. Like, I think the screen protector showed up to my house before the Smart Controller did, because I just knew that huge screen that I would be using all the time and shoving in and out of my bag, it was something that I needed to put a screen protector on. Did you have one on or no?
So I did have one on there, but you know, like the screen protector is going to protect you against like scratches and abrasions, but dropping the Smart Controller from, I would say it was probably about chest height on the cement slab. It was just enough to hit it. And plus too, when I looked at the camera, you can sort of see it hit the corner, and the corner is always the worst for glass. Yeah. So it hit it just hard enough to crack it, which was it's unfortunate, but you know what? It is what it is in that regard. That's just a reminder just to slow down and make sure you put your gear where it needs to go. I mean,
zip your stuff up,
because that could happen.
So
zip it.
You know, up to this point, we talked about the Ring drone camera. That thing's gonna be sweet. I'm excited for that. Only $250, so it should be a pretty good option. We also talked about that brutal Smart Controller update, but thank God that it's here, because it does add Mavic Air 2 compatibility, which, you know, in thinking about it, the demographic that targets is like so small, and those videos that we posted still did pretty good and got to a good amount of people, but the amount of people that have a Mavic Air 2 and a Smart Controller, I think, like we talked about, are probably pretty slim. So you know, if you're in that small minority, let us know what you think of that update. And finally, now what you wanted to discuss, and what I think is a good thing to discuss, is DJI being used or being kind of kicked out of government, which is something that has just been talked about so much. But you know, I think it's something that's always a relevant topic. So they're
finally doing it, though. Yeah, it is a relevant topic, because you know, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. Talk about it again now, because I think it's important to talk about this, and the fact that the largest manufacturer, the company that really started everything, right? They started everything when it came to the popularity and the use case of drones, and they're obviously one of DJI America is probably one of the biggest proponents for using UAVs, whether it be for search and rescue, whether it be for commercial applications. I mean, they're the push. They sort of made the ecosystem and basically I would say the bar that everybody tries to exceed, but not many. I don't think anybody exceeds it. They just either hit it or just come just short of it. So, but yeah, they're basically getting TikTok, man.
Yeah. Well, they were getting TikToked before TikTok was around, but it just seems that now, with TikTok being, you know, a concern in the minds of some people, DJI is now also becoming an even bigger, you know, an even bigger target. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So I saw your stream last night talking about American-made drones, and that Teal Golden Eagle drone, that looks so much like the Skydio X2.
Doesn't it look like the Skydio? It really does look like the Skydio, and even like their promotion. I don't know if you remember Teal. Teal came out with this wild idea for a modular drone 2 years ago, and they had this wild idea that this was going to be the way to go, and it had terrible range, and it was poorly thought out for what it was, and it was overly expensive, and I don't think it ever got any traction. I don't know how they kept funding, to be
I don't even think that I ever heard of that.
Yeah, so they came out with that. So then now they've moved over. A lot of these companies have moved over to the private sector, and they're really focusing on the commercial aspect. You know, obviously we saw the writing on the wall back when Parrot had their announcement for the latest Anafi. We knew what was going on because Parrot's marketing team obviously really played up to that, right? They played up to DJI.
They named the drone Parrot Anafi USA. They literally put the United States of America in the name of the drone.
They really did. And I think the other thing too is something interesting that whatchamacallit, Sean from Geeks Fauna said. He goes, this probably wouldn't have been a massive ordeal, but DJI got their hands caught in the cookie jar too many times with all those applications. And he even pointed out the fact they updated those apps. They removed a lot of the malicious code in the app. So, the fact that, all right, you did that, and then the fact that there's certain policies overseas surrounding these drones that, if the government beckons upon you, you have to answer. That's sort of scary to even know that exists. Like, if they ask you to spy, you have to do it. You have to. There's that's their honor. That's their code. So that's always a concern. But now we have this rise of people trying to play catch up, I guess, trying to capture this market. And the problem is, what I fear is going to happen is you're going to have all these people trying to develop these products, and they're just gonna miss the boat on it, and it's just not going to be quite as good, which is a shame.
I can just say from watching the introduction for the Golden Eagle here from Teal, it doesn't, even just watching the video, it doesn't scream quality. It doesn't scream
quality.
It looks like you attach the arms on separately. There's no distance in between the ground and the drone itself. You kind of put it on the belly and then it takes off. Teal has never been really at the top of my list of drone manufacturers, and I think that Skydio entering the space, it's just gonna explode for them. But even just this promo video is kind of and I think it's funny because I'm watching, and within the first 5 seconds they flash a little "Made in America" thing down in the bottom right corner. So there's definitely a market here.
The name like Golden Eagle, though, it's just like, do you find that tacky or corny by any chance? I just thought it was I thought it was a joke at first. They had that very dramatic, announcer talking about it, and they it's like the military guys are doing this, this is the Golden Eagle, and I'm just this is bad. This is really bad.
So I think that Golden Eagle is a lot better than putting USA in the title. So yeah, I don't know. I'm up in the air. I think that if it was an actually badass drone, I think it'd be a cool name. Golden Eagle.
Yeah, I agree. The controller looks cool though. The RC that they're gonna bundle with that definitely looks interesting. But again, it goes back to something I keep thinking about, was something that Sean said. He's it's buying something just because it's in the USA is not reason enough to buy a product. But I guess when you're dealing with Department of Justice and things like that, and you're dealing with things on a national level, I can understand the concern where the data is going. I can understand that. But I think that these companies are going to have to really step up. I think Skydio, honestly, is the only one that's really got the massive edge here, to be honest with you.
Totally, yeah. I mean, they've proven themselves with their consumer level drones, and I think that they made a really good jump going from the consumer level to, obviously bring some money in to get their name out there. And then now they're jumping over to the, the more
100%.
private sector with commercial drones. They really did a good job there with that transition. And their software is just incredible. I mean, kind of like Tesla, how they're like a software company that happens to make cars. Skydio is a software company that happens to make drones,
Right, exactly. I mean, that X2 is going to be expensive. I know a lot of people got really excited about it, but I'm like, no, we'll never have one. It's not maybe you may buy one if it's commercialized, but that's almost $20,000 unit. That's not going to be the everyday, every person drone. And I'm sure they're going to be very, very stingent upon whom they sell that to. But I think, all these guys, the biggest Achilles heel of all the American manufacturers in my eyes is the fact that they can't get products in a timely fashion to the people who order them, with the exception of Parrot, but they don't really count because they've had an infrastructure in place for a while.
Yeah, and they also don't have many people they have to service.
Right. I mean, what should have happened? This is what should happen. The U.S., someone here, a U.S.-based company needs to just buy Unique, because nobody even buys Unique products. So it'd be really easy to fulfill that demand, because they would have, just a bunch of people standing around just looking for something to do. Problem solved.
Yeah, Unique, I feel so bad. We rip on Unique all the time. But if you think about it, they were big players in the drone industry in the beginning, but then they just didn't innovate at all. And that's really why they fell behind. And I think that there's still a solid consumer base there that trusts Unique drones and will buy them. But there's just been such a lack of innovation on Unique's part, and it's kind of a shame.
And what's funny is last year we didn't even see them at CES. They were MIA. And I just can't help but think they're just going to be slowly but surely removing themselves from this world, or maybe they just part out what bit of technology that they have that's proprietary to somebody else to use or recycle for another quad of some sort. It's always tough to say, but I just find the whole thing interesting. I mean, I always see Brendan Schulman on Twitter just really campaigning hard, and obviously rightfully so. That's what he's hired to do, right? He's there to sort of be DJI's biggest proponent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean he's always. Oh boy, I lost Ken. I wonder what he's saying on the other side. We usually do a phone call. He's calling me back. You there, buddy?
Yeah, did I mention I hate these fucking AirPods? If you even adjust them in your ear, if you even adjust these AirPods in your ear, they'll hang up the call.
Yeah, I hate that. Anyway, so Brandon Schulman, he's always campaigning for DJI, and I almost think that he's one of those guys where if you go too far, he'll get really upset about what you say about DJI. I think so. He works for the company, so I understand. But Skydio seems like a fun company, and they'll take jabs at DJI on Twitter, and DJI Brendan Schulman is the first person responding. There was one where they were talking about the difference between Skydio 2's autonomy and Mavic Air 2's autonomy, and then Brendan Schulman follows up with 10 YouTube links and is like, "Look at these people. They like our drone."
Yeah, it was funny. It's it's even funnier is because I know the person that we know the person that's behind the social media posts. And it's the fact that they're just so freaking fast. They're very fast with what they post. And they've really given. And then the fact is, they all get in on it, because then Adam will chime in. He's we haven't calibrated our robots today, or something stupid like that. But it's just, it adds to the fact, because they're sort of they're almost so smart for their own good. I don't know how to put it any other way, but I'm excited to see what they do next. I know they're still fulfilling orders for the Skydio 2, even after we're almost approaching 1 year. Can you believe that?
I know.
1 year since the Skydio 2 was released, and they still haven't fulfilled all the orders. That sort of makes me feel a little bit better about my camera not shipping today, because there's actually hope. There's actually hope that Sony's not going to make me wait an entire year. Well, but that's crazy.
There's no doubt that the pandemic had something to play.
Oh, for sure.
With the shipping, and especially being in California where regulations are a little bit more strict.
And all the fires now are out there.
Yeah, it's understandable. I mean, you look at DJI and they had like a lot of time to kind of prepare for the Mavic because they had sold so many drones before that boom of the Mavic Pro. I mean, that was the first drone to really hit. And if you remember, like you would order it and you weren't going to get it for another like 3 months. So that was pretty bad. But Skydio is like on their second drone they're hitting and they're like working out of a little shop, you know? So compared to what DJI is, at least, I mean, they don't have the same infrastructure and their drone is probably, I would say, almost equally in demand as what else is on the market from DJI.
But that's what I'm saying is I mean, all these companies, these American companies, you know, had to see the writing on the wall. They saw that DJI was figuring out and perfecting logistics. For the most part, DJI does have logistics and warranty down to, I would say, a pretty damn good science that if you send a drone out in about 2 weeks' time, you're going to get your new unit back, sometimes a little bit faster. They're almost like GoPro in a sense, to where when you send a camera out and they receive it, they're already getting ready to ship you out another one in that one's place. So I think that these companies, if they want to succeed, they want to beat DJI at their own game, they have to get logistics down first. They have to be able to keep up with the demand. Obviously, when you're dealing with enterprise, it's an entirely different animal. There isn't like consumers that are like, where's my product calling and pestering and pecking.
I can only imagine.
Enterprise consumers, they're just sort of like, here's a purchase order, let me know when you bill us, we'll see it when we see it. That's sort of how they are, and they're just like their hands off after that point. Very professional. But yeah, I think it's good stuff, man. I'm excited. There's so much more we can talk about, but obviously we got to make sure we have content for the rest of the shows. Otherwise, we won't do another episode.
You won't see us for another 2 months, or
I know,
listen to us.
We're gonna really make sure that we do the best we can to try to get at least, I would say, 3-4 podcasts out a month. Like for there's been times where there just hasn't been a lot of news, and now all of a sudden we're getting into the, I would say, peak season for tech. Like this is Techtember or Techtober, whatever you want to call it. But we got gimbals on the horizon. I know we talk about drones, but we try to talk about everything full circle. We got gimbals on the horizon from DJI. Potential other drone that's sort of lingering out there that I've heard rumors about with DJI. And then, of course, there may be even a new Osmo Action being released.
Are you talking about a Mavic 3?
I'm not talking about a Mavic 3, actually. No, I'm actually talking about their FPV drone.
Oh, yeah. Dude, you know what? I know you're heavily into the FPV, and it's something that I got to sink my teeth into, but it's not.
Don't do it. It's a money pit, and it's a time waster. It's like, think of it like, that's the reason why I didn't buy an Xbox, because I was thinking to myself, if I bought an Xbox, I probably would never play it because I just don't have any time now. I don't even know how I find time now. Dude, so plus two with everything we do.
That Xbox Series X launch was an absolute nightmare. I finally ended up getting
a pre-order
in. Yeah, I got a pre-order in after refreshing the page hundreds and hundreds of time. I finally ended up getting through. It was like probably.
What's with companies not being able to get pre-orders down? Like
even Microsoft.
You think they would just get it? I know.
But that's just so typical of Microsoft, because I just feel like their apps are always so far behind. Like even when they come out with a brand new app, Microsoft Teams just came out, it still feels like it's behind. Like it's this brand new piece of software. And they're almost turning into Google, cannibalizing what else they have. Like they've got Skype, so what's the point of having Skype now with Microsoft Teams? I don't know. It's a huge mess. The only company that really makes sense in what they do is Apple. Like they have one thing for one thing. They have one product for one thing, and that's good.
Right. They don't keep developing and repurposing things or develop something when they already I get what you're saying.
Like Google has so many different things and so many different pieces of software that I didn't even know exist, but all right,
that's why, but they don't have consistency though. That's the problem. They don't have, not to go off on that tangent, but they don't have consistency. They'll make one thing and then that thing doesn't work. They let it sit out there for a little bit and then they kill it off. Where Apple is like, oh, we're going to do iMessage. It's going to stay here, and it's been here ever since it's been introduced. They didn't sort of backtrack it. So
totally.
But that's it, guys. That's the show. If you guys have any questions, you can always reach out to us on Twitter. I'm at Original Dobo, and Billy is at Billy Kyle. We'll be down in the comments section checking it all out. Hope you guys enjoy. Anything else, Bill?
No, that's all. But Ken, you got to get up here to Philly in October. So
I know, man. I'm coming up in October. That's on the to-do list. I want to get out to Croton Dam.
Yeah, we'll do it,
dude. That's gonna be so good with the colors. So
I know.
Let's do it.
All right, you guys.
See you.
Later.